You Hurt My Feelings is generally a good film. It's a little slow in places. The second half's not that good, but then towards the end it picks up a bit. So in general, I'd say it's probably worth watching. This was released in 2023. It's directed and written by Nicole Holofcener, and I apologise if I've mispronounced that. And we have a cast including Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Tobias Menzies, Michaela Watkins. Great cast. Julia Louis-Dreyfus plays a character called Beth, and one thing that I did really enjoy about this is how much I just was Beth. Everything she felt, I felt, because she's a writer, I'm a writer, and I just thought, what would I do in this situation? And I spent the entire film imagining myself as Beth, and it was a really interesting experience in that regard. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a writer or a creator, an artist of any kind to enjoy this, but I do think it helps in those times when the narrative is actually quite slow. Being able to connect directly with Beth, I think, is really beneficial. Beth overhears her husband talking about her novel and saying that he doesn't like it. He wasn't like saying all of these really horrible things or anything. He was just confiding in somebody that he didn't really like it. And obviously this really upsets her, as anybody would be upset by overhearing somebody saying they didn't like their work, but particularly when it's your husband. And there are several questions here. Will she tell him that she overheard? If she does, how will he react? And ultimately, what will happen with the novel? And I feel like, for the most part, not a lot happens, to be perfectly honest. It's mostly driven, well, by the relationship between Beth and Don, and some things that are happening with Don as well. So we do have a bit of a subplot there to give it a bit more substance. But I will say that for a long time, just not a lot happens, and it is very, very slow. And there are times when it picks back up again, and then it just seems to drop off again. And as I said, about the halfway mark, it really slowed down, but I was still emotionally invested to find out ultimately what would happen. And I think there are some really good takeaways if you can relate to the situation, whether you're the Beth or the Dawn of this scenario. I think if you can't relate to this at all, I don't think it'll be a good experience. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. There are many films that are aimed at certain people. They're not going to have wide appeal. Not every film will appeal to absolutely everybody. But I just think that I don't necessarily believe they were just trying to aim this at artists and creators. I generally feel like they were probably trying to have a wide audience appeal, but it's not that good otherwise. There's not a lot of substance. Maybe if you're having relationship problems and communication issues, maybe there's a bit of benefit there. But generally speaking, unless you can relate to one of the characters, I don't think that there's much to get out of this. But I do think that if you are the Beth or the Dawn, there could be some great messages about communication and also how to receive that kind of information. I will say, and this is a point that I was really happy that they made, the real reason Beth was upset is not necessarily because Dawn had said, I don't like her novel, her latest novel. It's because she'd let him read every draft for feedback. And she pointed out that he always loved every draft. But speaking as a writer, maybe other writers are different. I can't speak for everybody. But when you give somebody a draft of your work to read, you are generally looking for honest feedback because you want to improve before you submit it to the publisher. You don't want something that's not as good as you think it is or hope it is. So you give it to people for the purpose of feedback. And if they just say, yeah, I loved it, because they don't want to hurt your feelings, that's pointless. That's a waste of time. Don't do that. Maybe some writers are just looking for praise, so they have the confidence to carry on with the next draft, in which case, fair enough, but maybe just communicate that and actually say, well, actually, I don't want your honest opinion. I just want you to say, yeah, it's good. And some people might just need that. But speaking for myself, if I want somebody to read a draft, it's generally because I am either seeing plot holes or I'm not sure if this aspect or this character worked very well. So I'm looking for that honest feedback, and I get the impression that so was Beth. So Don just saying he loved every draft, on the one hand, I don't blame him. It seems like a valid response to give your spouse, but it's so unhelpful and quite frankly a waste of everybody's time. So I was really glad that they included that. Had it been the first time he'd read it with the finished manuscript, then at that point, yeah, picking it apart, might be a bit pointless because it's unlikely that Beth is then going to scrap it and go back to stage one. But he had the opportunity throughout to actually say, well, maybe this could be better, or maybe this doesn't quite work, or I, as a reader, am not feeling this or that. So again, other writers may be looking for something different, but I'm with Beth here. And so is my cat, apparently. If you have somebody's draft to read, and it's an early stage, give them the honest feedback that they're looking for. Yes, Medora. So I was really happy that they included that. And again, that was something that, for me as a writer, I really got a lot of benefit out of following this journey with Beth, because just everything she said and everything she felt, I just thought, I'm with you. I understand. I get where you're coming from. So if you are a writer, an artist, a creator of any kind, I think you will have an emotional response to Beth's journey. If you are the partner of a creator, you might be a creator yourself as well, but if you are a partner of somebody who is given manuscripts to read, certainly of early drafts when there's still plenty of time to make revisions, generally either provide honest feedback or make sure that that's what the person wants, and then give them the feedback, because you're just wasting your time and you're wasting their time while they're waiting for your feedback, and then the feedback you provide is so unhelpful. So I think there are some great messages here, but unfortunately, a lot of the events, or I guess lack thereof, are just not that interesting. Getting from one point to the next is very slow. It's not that fascinating. Yes, I liked Beth as a character because I could connect with her. But if I couldn't, I probably wouldn't have got much out of this film. So I feel like it had a lot of potential. It didn't live up to that potential. But if you can connect with Beth, or if you are the Dawn of the film, then I'd say maybe it's worth watching. I think there are some valuable perspectives here. Other than that, it definitely needed a bit of work to be more entertaining and more engaging. But for the right audience, I think You Hurt My Feelings has a lot of value. And I'm going to go and feed my cat now, who is clearly having her feelings hurt. And I lost my train of thought now. It's a good film. It's not an amazing film, but if you can relate, I'd say it's absolutely worth watching, because Beth is like my soul, and as a character, I can't think of another character with whom I've connected, at least recently, as much as I did with Beth. Maybe Diane Chambers, but other than that, Beth, I'm with you. I understand. Let's communicate more. Let's say what we actually want and what we actually mean, and ultimately we can watch this film and enjoy it, but it's not going to be for everybody.